I remember when first time I saw Girls, Girls, Girls. This is when you realize that these guys are masters of reinventing themselves. They are really chameleons of the world around them. When you look at this first album, Too Fast for Love, do you remember seeing this? Do you remember seeing what these guys look like? They've got this leather, they've got a little bit of a New York Dolls look to them, a little bit of Judas Priest mixed in there. When you look at the insert that they included, you also have Satan worship. All you know is that these guys look like dangerous, rebellious street kids. There's just something about this that it just feels like danger. Then you get into Shout at the Devil, and now we have this post-apocalyptic Mad Max Road Warrior look. And then you have this. What is this? They go from this Mad Max look to lace. This is full-on glam metal. This is Rat. And look on the inside here. They've got scarves. This is full-on glam metal. They went from the Road Warrior to this. This turned a lot of people off. Now, I want to point out something about this picture that's going to play into something else on the Girls, Girls, Girls cover in just a second. Check out the way Vince and Mick Mars are standing, and look at the way that Nikki Sixx and Tommy Lee are standing. Vince Neil's standing straight up, and Nikki Sixx is basically doing the splits a little bit. Tommy Lee is leaning over. Why is that? Well, Nikki Sixx is about 6'1", Vince and Mick are about 5'9", and Tommy Lee is 6'2". And so in order to get all their faces on the same level, these two basically have to lean down so that they all look like they're about the same height. So they go from this to this. They're taking on this whole biker gang look now, especially look at Vince wearing white and pink. And then we move over to Girls, 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 and now he's in a biker gang. I mean, look at these. He's wearing leather studs. He's on a Harley. The changes they made from album to album were just incredible. Now, when I looked at this album, when I first saw this thing, you know, of course you see Tommy Lee and you go, that's obviously Tommy. You see Vince, setting aside the massive changes, it's obviously Vince. And Mick, yeah, you're like Mick. But then you look at Nikki. He just looks so different. I remember seeing this for the first time. You realize when you take a look at this book that there's a reason that they took this picture kind of grainy from a distance. And I want to share something with you from this book. This is Nikki Sixx's entry from January 31st of 1987. I weigh 164 pounds, 40 pounds less than a year ago. Last night I went to Vanity's, and when I left this morning, I stole one of her leather jackets. I'm so effing thin, I can wear her clothes, and some are actually baggy. Then you go down to Doc McGhee. Doc McGhee put some notes in here, and he says, Nikki looked effing awful when he became a junkie. He sank into himself, lost all his weight, and just hung around his heroin den house looking horrible. So again, like I said, from this picture over here, he's a relatively tall guy. He's like 6'1", and he weighs 164 pounds. Now, that's not anorexia level, that's just skinny level. But what he does look is dramatically different, to the point that he would look sickly. When you look at this a little closer, then you go, yeah, he looks different. He wouldn't look like he had anorexia, but if you compared him, if you were used to seeing him at 200 pounds, and then you saw him at 164 pounds, you would say, something is really, really wrong with this guy. And you realize that the reason they took the picture the way they did, a little bit grainy, a little bit blurry from a distance, is they're hiding Nikki's heroin addiction. Because when you just look at him, when you look at his gaunt face, when you look at the fact that he's lost 40 pounds, you realize that something is dramatically wrong.